How many times have you shared a stage like this before? Together?
Together, this is the first.
Together, this is the first time.
Yeah. And how does it feel? I have to ask you that.
Well, speaking about issues related to the region, it's usually difficult to summarize because there are so many issues that you want to speak about and talk about and think of and have the opportunity to discuss with people. But also it's a form of solidarity when a center like the Nobel Peace Center invites women to speak about their issues in a form of discussion and debate as well. This is a form of solidarity with women and their issues, which we for sure appreciate.
Now, I have to start asking you as well, because there are many issues that also split you. You come from different countries. There are national conflicts and tensions in the region. There are religious tensions and conflicts in the region. There are different cultures, different views of the role of women, etc. Now, you have that, all those issues that might split you, and then there are still some issues that unite you. How are you dealing with balancing out the differences? Nargess, maybe you can start a little bit.
Among ourselves, how are we? Well, for me, why I came here, and I was trying to. I heard very interesting stories and very different speeches actually, but I'm trying to learn from these ladies how the women's rights movement in their respective countries managed to face with these challenges, and that's what, because I think we kind of have we might have similar problems in the region in somehow, and so I want to see how the women's rights movement in these countries has managed, is trying to face these challenges. That's,
but you're going to find a lot of initiatives trying to split you as well. And I'm sure you've already experienced that other people will come and say, you don't have anything in common because your countries are sort of on opposing sides.
No, I think we have more in common than more in difference, actually.
Very good. Asma?
I see it, I don't know. I see it very differently. Because I have a very special connection to activists. I mean, in general, activists are very close to my heart, but with women from the region, it's my people, you know? So even though I know the contexts are very different, and when I listen to a lot of their struggles, which sound like a million years from my struggles because of the differences, I still get inspired. They give me hope and drive. So
there's a sense of belonging when it comes to activism and women's rights. I mean, no matter what challenges we're facing or what the context of our activism is, there is a sense of belonging when we see another activist, no matter which country they're coming from, just advocating for improvement of women's condition around the world, makes you feel home, makes you feel a sense of belonging, as I said. And you want to contribute because you feel it. And I believe that all the women who have started advocating for women's life are survivors of some sort of challenge or a pain. And when you start your activism, it never ends. It's a way of living, and I can see that undertone. I was saying to Asma that she has an undertone of activism, a women's activist, when she speaks. And it's so powerful that it affects the surrounding, the people around you. And that's how we, move forward. that sense of, unity. That's how we, so we are from different countries. We have never met in person. We have just started something, but I'm sure it will lead somewhere really great because we know each other deep within, and that's where the change begins. It's deep within. So it's not about differences. It's about where we can join forces and when we can help each other and how we can help each other. And we will obviously find those ways.
And let's acknowledge as well that difference is not always bad. It's good,
Yeah.
because it opens your eyes to the other perspectives, the ways in which they look at things. And the most important here, when we look at differences, is to understand each other. Sometimes we might not agree with each other, but also we need to think and open our minds to what other women from different contexts, they would think of their priorities. I like the question because at least the question acknowledges and recognizes that women coming from the region are not one group, and they do have different perspectives, and sometimes there are tensions as well between women's groups. Mostly these tensions are actually political rather than related to women's rights, because you can't separate in any way women's rights from the political. And there are tensions related to the government, restrictions on NGOs, and there are tensions related to international organizations' practices in relation to funding and proposal writing and competition and all of these things. So there are different types of tension, but the most important thing when we come together and if we as I said, even if there are differences, it's important to understand each other's perspectives and to be open to think from different perspectives.
And you touched upon this, Nargess, also in your description of the various roles that different women's organizations were playing now in Iran. Huh?
Mm-hmm.
Now, you are all activists, you all have strong voices, many followers, and you all have this combination of higher education, academia, journalism, activism. Now, what role does education have in terms of promoting women's rights in the MENA region?
Yeah, we were discussing this issue earlier.
Today.
It has, of course. It has it is an important issue, education and access to education, but also education not always an indicator of gender equality. We were discussing earlier that, for instance, in Jordan, the number of females in higher education is high. In some cases, it's even higher than men. But still, when you look at the labor force, you would see men represent only 13% of the labor force. Where are all the educated women gone? And this is a serious question. Then we need to look at other discriminatory laws and practices, and we need to look at what kind of education is actually accessible and offered for women, mostly in health, in education sector, in areas where they think that these areas are for women. But we do have women in different sectors, in engineering and other sectors that were mostly thought to be male jobs. But in the end, even if you do have women doing these jobs, and women can stretch their gender roles in terms of having some jobs, but the issue, if the education does not change the mentality, gender norms, and the ways in which we look at women as a complete human being. A law like the guardianship law limits women's roles and responsibilities and limit their contribution in the community as a whole. So education is a very significant factor. It's very important, but it's one of the things that we need to look at, and we need to look at it from the whole structure, the whole hierarchical structure in any state.
And yeah, education and a good portion of sort of fighting spirit, huh?
I have one question. Sorry. By education, do you mean like formal education or raising awareness, like by education? Because if in a broad sense you mean like not university formal education, generally awareness, that's what the women's rights movement in Iran has focused a lot, and like the campaign 1 million signature to change the discriminatory laws. The main focus of the campaign was to raise awareness among the less advantaged part of the society, like because there is this conception about among many people of the society that when you talk about women's rights, some say, what do you want? You want Western life, you want subversion, you are against men, and then like with this campaign, it was shown to people that what we want is that if your father dies, you and your brother can both receive the same amount of inheritance, or if you want to work and the husband cannot bar you from working, like you can't bar him from working, and that's helped a lot to, in making the society be ready to for this dialogue of gender equality. I think that's a very big step.
Well, I mean, no doubt that raising awareness is important as well, and that you are part and parcel of doing that very, very broadly. Now, before I open up for questions and comments from the room here, I'd like to hear also a little bit about where do you want to be in 5 years' time in terms of a collective? Because, I mean, every big, powerful organization and network starts small. It's about building one step after the other, trying to focus on what we agree on and not let anyone split us. But where do you want to be in 5 years' time?
Working
Aida.
on grassroots movements and working with grassroots movements. That's where we belong, basically. We are not about, building a huge organization or, like other platforms. We are activists. The type of work that we are doing is different. So I guess what I personally envision in 5 years is we're building a huge alliance of women who are enthusiastic and have the power to impact the society. And that's where we're heading to. I can't, I have high hopes, as I said earlier, but still, in a general sense, where we can make change, we're there. Obviously with a, more expanded network and more powerful voices from different countries. Next year, hopefully, we're trying to bring in more voices from other countries. We have limited this time because of our limitations. We're a small group at the moment. We're trying to utilize, and join forces with sponsors and, act as an agent to bring more voices to be heard and to connect them to the influential, people that can make change in the societies and can, make recommendations to the governments or work on the grassroots level or educate women in, grassroots level. We'll see how it goes.
Afaf?
Yeah, I think Aida answered the question in relation to the Oslo Women's Initiative. For me, I'm an activist, I'm a feminist and a researcher, and there are different areas where I'm engaged in the region. So at the activism level, it continues at different levels in different countries. And yeah, I think Aida's answer was complete.
It's always very difficult for me to respond about the question of time with activism. We are working towards issues that are for the future. You know, we are working on things that we want to see in the future. But it's always the future somewhere at the back of our heads, but it's not really in terms of years, you know what I mean? It's like we work a year at a time, sometimes a campaign at a time, a project at a time. But I hope that the network will thrive and grow, and that it will use all its resources so we could help younger movements, younger activists, mentor and transfer knowledge to each other.
Yes, I mean, I think I don't have anything to add to what Aida and Asma says, and that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Building power from below, basically.
That's true, yeah. Bottom-up change. That's what we're doing.
Yeah. Very good. I'm going to open up for questions, comments from the room. We have a little bit of time, so please feel free to raise issues. And it's good if you introduce yourself initially.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hi, my name is Shabana Rehman. I represent a new organization in Norway. It's a new organization, but it's not. It is an old fight. I have a question for you, Asma. You told us so powerfully that everything they don't tell. What do you think will happen if the world starts really telling all those stories of all those heroes, the love, the daily life, the people? What do you think will happen then? What do you see will come and grow out of it?
I think, in a sense, we, as women especially, need to reclaim the narrative that is written about us, that is spoken about us. And in a way, when I speak about war, I always speak of it as our resistance to it. Because that's how the world should think of war. The world should consciously take the choice to say no more. Because it does not bring peace, it does not bring solution. And when you hear the stories of others, and I was not really good at sharing my stories, I had to learn from other activists and really inspiring people who share, because you always think it's not significant, it doesn't matter, it just happens. You know, like us women when we're like, yeah, I just did that and that, but it's okay, I'm fine, it doesn't matter. And we undermine the connection as human beings we have, because even though I come from a different place, you relate to me. And if you relate to me, and if I get to you the message of what I've been through and what war does, and you say no more, then I've achieved quite a lot.
When I see you up there, I'm thinking this is a potential international coalition. And my question is, do you think if all women from the different countries are working together, can also strengthen individual fights in individual countries as well?
Question to any of us, right? Yes, of course, it should. Of course, because when you not only thinking of coalition inside the region, but also there is a need for international solidarity. The issues that we have been raising about women in the region, they are not only related to women in the region, they are related also to women in so many other areas, particularly conflict areas. When we talk about militarism, globalized militarism and political economy and neoliberal policies, these are not only issues for women in the region. These are issues that affect women all over the world. And because of that, we need to find this common ground and common context for a struggle to show that solidarity, that it's not only because this region is cursed or because this region is violent or because this region, there's something wrong about it. There is more. There's this new imperial wars that's happening, and the region is one of these regions. It's not just in the region. And that's why the solidarity in this time is more important than any other time. Because now it's happening in the region, and it's happening, we can see that there will be a new emerging other wars in other regions. And there is a new issues also here in Europe. If we don't tackle them right now, they will grow up. And they will be a threat to every single individual in this room and in Europe as a whole. Hatred, far-right groups, issues related to refugees and refugees. These are serious issues. And what's happening in the region is also affecting people here. And what's happening in the region is related, and it's the responsibility of many European states. Either they supply arms, or other they contribute themselves in bombing these cities. So because of this, because of the global nature of these wars, we do have the responsibility of coming together and having a solidarity together. And maybe we will not agree in everything, but at least to have this common ground for us to advocate for and against, particularly this issue of war.
Hello, my name is Ingrid Selin, and I think this was a very interesting presentations. And you talked about countries and contexts that actually have different contexts and different histories. Iran with the revolution, Libya with the war, and Jordan. I don't know so much about Jordan, but anyway. So what I was just wondering, because I've been working on FGM with many countries in Africa, and some of them, those activists, they feel they have to target religious leaders in order to tell them, give them another presentation of, for instance, the religion, Islam, and tell them that it is not obligatory to be cut, which is, and try to explain to them and teach them. I just wonder, do you feel as activists you have to teach religious leaders, or do you target the government first of all, or you target the media, or who do you try to target the most? That is what I wondered about. And yes.
You want to start, Nargess?
Yes. First of all, I just want to say that the FGM is not a religious matter, like in countries where are not Muslims, the practice is being held. And I want to just let you know about one initiative which was made in Kenya, I think, by a group of activists and anthropologists, that even though the practice was banned by the government, the families carried out still it, because they thought it was in the best interest of their girls. So what activists in that area did, and I think it's very good if we carry it in other countries, is like because they make a research to see why these families do, despite the fact that it is unlawful now, and that they come to that how the family was thinking that it's good for the girls before reaching puberty and this stuff. And so they made workshops about sexual education of the girls, and they call it circumcision through words. So, which was, the cutting part was deleted, and the girls were just given some educational stuff regarding the puberty, and after that, and this stuff. And it worked in that context because the families had found a replacement for the circumcision, which was circumcision through words. So, yeah, and in each country, I think it's different, but I think activists need to be innovative in finding the way, and For example, in Iran, what women rights activists did is that for many laws, when they wanted to both challenge the government and convince the religious segment of society, they went to some religious thinker and asked who were reformative, they were not conservative, and they had reformative ideas. And they asked for fatwas on an issue, and they showed this fatwa they published this fatwa, and they showed it to politicians, to the religious segments, they make a voice about it. So I think the important is to see where this resistance comes from. Is it a religious resistance? Is this a cultural resistance? And then try to tackle that issue, which is different country by country.
I would agree to that. I mean, many see activism as protests loud, chaotic, but we develop to be strategists, negotiators, and mediators. And it's about mapping who I need to speak to. And if you want to really tackle the issue, then you have to speak to everyone. And religious leaders and priests are really, sad to say this, but they're really important because it's a voice that it carries a lot of weight to the population. So it's difficult to say you have to educate the religious leaders, right? Because these men come with the holy power of God at their back. And you come as a woman who's really in a power dynamic as not on the same level at all. But what I advise a lot of activists to do, and what I do myself, is be sneaky. He starts to tell you that you're a jewel and so important in a religion, and tells you about all the stories of the women, of the wives of the prophets, etc. Good, use that. You say, yeah, so we are on the same page, so allow me to talk to that people, or can you give us a space to do that, or can you take advantage even of the sexism? Because sometimes it is what it is, that's what you have, and you have to use your resources. So it is about being strategic, and you have to speak to everyone.
But also, it depends on the context and the issue itself. For instance, FGM, female genital mutilation, I wouldn't mind to do this, to work with religious leaders, because there is no mention of this practice in Quran or in Islam. It does not relate to Islam in any way. So religious leaders will be with you because it's not practice unless they do have other interpretation. I don't know where they would bring it. But for other issues, it could be really very tricky for women's rights to engage with religious leaders, because in this way you would make a compromise. And here you really need to pick what you're doing. You need to decide. If you are taking this side, it means that you are agreeing on this compromise. There are certain issues particular, and depends, as I said, on the context. If I talk from a context of Iran or Saudi Arabia or in Jordan, our state is not a religious state. Okay, Islam is the religion of the state, but all laws that govern the state are civil laws, only laws that govern family issues, which are related to marriage, divorce, and inheritance, are partly, not fully, coming from Sharia. So we have always this question of why. Why, when it comes to family issues and women's rights, we think of Sharia law, and when it comes to the tax system, banking, any other issues, no, we are a secular state. And in this case, we really need to challenge the state and the ways in which they pick and choose from religion. If I'm in a full, complete Islamic state, then I would accept the negotiation. But when I'm in a secular state in every single issue, but not my women's rights, then here the situation is different. But also women in the ground, we have to use so many different strategies, all of what you have mentioned sometimes.
I just forgot a small comment. I really liked your presentation of your experience of the war. when you talked about your own, it's like being numbed or blocked your empathy for the other part. And then you opened up your blockings and you saw the suffering of the other, and it came to you, and you felt responsibility for the other. So you went and you worked as a nurse, you see? And that, I guess, is very important, because also in peace, you can block your empathy. And I think that is patriarchy, that men block their empathy for the woman, because they can see a woman struggle, they can see her work, and they block their empathy when they see her as a person who is only can inherit only half of the man, or she has to be compensated only half for blood money for the man, that she's worth only half of the man. And it's the view on the universal human being that a woman is not seen as equal to the man. And that means that we have to teach the men not to block their empathy, and to see a woman as a human being.
Aida, did you have any comments also about the choice of strategy?
Well, back in the years that I was an activist in country, I can't go back. I can't go back to Iran. So I'm basically an activist in diaspora at the moment. But we are connected. The good thing about Iranian network of activists, women's rights activists, is that exile wasn't a mean or an excuse to cut ties with your counterparts inside the country. So we have been trying to, reinforce our actions and do whatever we can within our, So back in Iran, I remember for 1 million signature campaign, yes, we did reach out to the religious leaders, but our major focus was to educate people, educate public, because as I said before, the bottom-up change will last longer. So that was the reason that we organized like hundreds of workshops in the areas, really, really rural areas that not many women have access to education. And they had needs, but there were no organizations to pay attention to those needs for education. So we were there as activists. And that's where I would go. Work with the public, work with women, and be their voice. That's what I would do. But yeah, sometimes there are different strategies to tackle an issue and address it. Sometimes, raising awareness and, speaking up with the media and, raising and organizing an international, global campaign about an issue. Creating hashtags on Twitter or, social media. Whatever works, but there is an issue that we have to address. So we have to find out what is the best situation that we can use and can take benefit from. So that's the approach that we take. I believe everybody who has done, activism is familiar with this approach.
I learned a lot about Iran from one of my favorite Nobel Peace laureates, who happens to be Nargess's mother as well, Shireen Ebadi. And also that voices that are forced into exile are actually heard quite well at home as well.
That's true.
Both on sort of the positive side and on with the negative reactions. There's a lot of regimes that are incredibly annoyed about voices heard from outside. So
That's our job, to annoy
exactly.
the governments that
Yeah.
are not doing, the best thing. That's what we do.
Very good. We had some more comments and questions, I think.
If it's not too late, it was just about the social media, because I wanted to ask you how you're using social media in the different countries, if it's difficult or dangerous some places to use it. Could you explain a little bit about that?
Anyone?
Yeah.
Nargess?
Nargis, do you want to start?
I just want to say that people use social media in Iran a lot, even though it is filtered. They find proxy, and we have even one person who is under execution sentence because of the posts, his Facebook posts. So people use it, and it's still risky. It's like your personal newspaper, but you're the editor. You can. So.
Asma?
Yeah, in Libya, it's a bit difficult because not everyone is online. And while a lot of Libyans are on Facebook, which is the main medium we use, for instance, I wouldn't post everything that we do about our work. So they know we have a presence, they know we exist, we post something sometimes, but I can't post that we've done a workshop on this and this and that. When I lied to the authorities to begin with, or an armed group in the city to be able to do the workshop. So we work a lot underground, and we lie. Like we say, we would have a workshop about women's health and children or something, and then it's about gender equality and how to be a feminist. So we can't say online, oh, we're doing the other thing. So we don't post, and that's also bad, because then the public are saying, where are you and what are you doing, because you're not visible. So we are caught in the middle of that sort of difficult situation. But I see on social media and the way we use it more as a safe space to discuss as women. So we have a lot of closed groups, whether it's for our projects or our campaigns or in general, has thousands of women, activists and non-activists. And that group that offers support, it's incredibly, incredibly important. Especially when, I think last year, there was a high rate of suicide among women in Libya. And then we had a closed group to offer support. We brought in all the social workers that we know, all the psychologists that we know. And we said, look, this is a space, a safe space. We were not accepting any male accounts, and whenever you feel, or you lose someone, or you feel that you don't want to continue anymore, we are here for you, and that was incredibly, incredibly important. But in most of my trainings, I give cybersecurity, so I tell the activists how to encrypt their emails. I ask them not to share things on Facebook messaging and use other tools, and that's very important, because some Facebook posts have once killed an activist. So it's, yeah.
Yeah, but social media has become one important tool for advocacy and mobilization in the region as a whole, of course, with differences based on the context. But women generally use social media very, very well and do have access to it. In Jordan, there is no problem when you advocate or use or mobilize it through this Facebook or Twitter, issues related to women's rights, discriminatory laws, anything related to the gender-based violence. In this kind of sphere, you would find also the National Commission for Women would be participating, which is part of the government, or some official people joining the campaign. So when it comes purely to women's rights, not related to politics and to issues related to gender-based violence, there is no problem. But in other contexts, as they said, it could be more harsh on women. In Palestine, it could lead to the invasion of your home or the arrestment of women and children. And in Egypt as well, although it has been used in the revolution very well, and it was one of the sites that people knew about the activities and the revolutions. But now it has become more and more difficult for women, particularly those who I mentioned, those who have been banned from travel, and they have been under the surveillance of the states, even when they post a few comments on the Facebook or Twitter. But generally speaking, it's one of the main tools are used to reach out to populations.
Aida?
Sure. Well, I mean, it's cyber activism. And a lot of people are getting involved more and more because, you know, the governments can't stop the flow of information. And everybody has access now. In case of Iran, it can be a bit tricky because, you know, we created, based on the hashtags and, you know, social media and access, we created cyber activism. And then Iranian government created cyber army to basically find out who is writing what, and they can locate them. And obviously, this is an ongoing battle between the government and the activists, the cyber activists. And there has been a lot of cases of arrests. There are people and activists who are still in jail for, you know, and have been issued long-term sentences for just managing a Telegram group, which is very popular in Iran. But the good point about the whole thing is raising awareness in a way that even the government can't block it, because, you know, there are some circumvention tools, and the activists who are in diaspora provide those tools to the in-country activists, and they use it. So this is some, you know, kind of ongoing battle between the government and the activists. And the interesting point is that even though the government has blocked, for example, Twitter in Iran, the authorities are still using it. And sometimes the hashtags that are trending are being used by the government authorities on the social platform, which is blocked by the government. So it's ironic, but it's there. It's and I think it's a very effective tool in terms of raising awareness and publicizing an issue, which is important if it's, you know, a specific situation or a case of, you know, specific person who is in danger, or as Nargess mentioned, we have had cases of people being in danger of imminent execution or that sort of thing. It has worked very good.
We don't have much time left. I'd like you all to have a chance to also come with a very brief concluding remark. But I'd like to ask you one question also before we start the round again. Because it strikes me that we've made numerous resolutions at the international level through the years about women's rights, equal rights, Resolution 1325 about women's participation, etc. And somehow there's not the ability or will to push it through in practice when it comes to specific regions, countries, national and regional level. We have also a few people who actually defend international interventions and actions with your issues. We have to do this and that because women in the Middle East and women in the MENA region, they're suppressed. So we have to help them by not talking to them, but doing things on your behalf. So I guess the question is, from your side, what kind of international support do you think should be given? What would you like to have from us in solidarity in order to promote women's rights in the MENA region?
Shall I start?
I'd like you all to sort of think loud a bit on that and come with also some other concluding comments if you have. So we do a last round. You can
Sure.
start, Aida.
Sure. So I think the real and effective support is the one that will let women in the region to identify their issue and provide support based on their terms, not what they think, I mean, the international community. Because obviously they're more knowledgeable, and they are the ones that know what needs to be addressed in international level and how it should be addressed. So give them voice, let them talk, provide them platform, be their voices, and let them identify the issue and connect them with the influential people who can help them. I don't want to go longer than that. I think I concluded just fine.
You already mentioned United Nations resolutions and too many conventions, either CEDAW or other international conventions that states in the region are committed to and they should comply with. But because of the double standards in general at the United Nations system, it's really very hard and very difficult to use these tools, although these tools are important, and our states are, by ratifying these tools, should domesticate them and should comply with these tools. But when we advocate for these tools, we have this challenge of that, bringing issues from the international community that in so many ways works against the region interest. So when we need to have a solidarity with women's rights, it's not just through certain issues related to women, because what makes the states and certain conservative group actually accuse women's rights of being external to the region or portrayals of the region or being Westerner is this way of not having, although there are some good solidarity groups based on the West, but at the United Nations in particular, of not having resolutions in favor of the region that has been implemented. When we think of the 1325 and we look, and also we have discussed this example, the issue of Syrian women being given a shadow council, not being in the council itself. So they are the shadow watching from outside. So these kinds of initiatives from the United Nations also undermine women's abilities and women's roles, and looking at women the same way as the states and conservative groups in the region think of them.
Thank you. Asma?
Well, I could speak for hours on international
I'm sorry I don't have that.
and specifically the UN, but I'll try to summarize. From my experience and then from what I've read about women's movement and work, recognition is still on paper. It is still on paper. No one wants to invest in women because also they undermine our positions to only women's rights. And that's an important agenda. That's the core of a lot of our issues. But we also talk politics. We also talk security, not just soft security. And they need to start seeing it, because that's the smart thing. I mean, it's really ridiculous that we have to speak in a way that, oh, you need to bring women because they bring this and that to the table. But we never ask men, what are they bringing to the table? We never ask men, why are they qualified to be on peace process? But we constantly want a woman who's a superhero, otherwise she will be a shadow or working in the corridor. And I think that's also an individualist attitude within all of these structures. People are not in check with their own stereotypes of women. So it is a big issue, but I think even though the international support, the UN support is quite important for a lot of women's movement, I think women's movements need to be a little bit bratty and say, no, not your way, we have to do it differently.
Nargess?
Yeah, I mean, I addressed this in my speech when I was saying the role of the international community. I mean, mainly, like what Aida said, I think the safest way, which is more consensus about it in Iran at least, I'm just saying of my country, is giving platform and giving voice to the subject, specifically the subject which is so taboo that it can be covered within Iranian media. So here the international community can help by giving voice and by watching through the special rapporteur and UN mechanism. I think these two are the safest, the most consensus.
Thank you. Thank you all. We've run out of time. We are very happy and honored that you chose to have this initiative here. And there is Miriam as well. And I think we are going to follow you actively for a long, long time to come. Now, we here at the Nobel Peace Center believe that there are too few women, not enough women, that have won the Nobel Peace Prize. So we are giving out Peace Prize medals. Unfortunately, they are out of chocolate, but with a big, big thank you to... Even better.
Chocolate.
With a big thank you to all of you.
Oh, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Yes, and a big applause for all of them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Miriam, you definitely earned that. Thank you all for coming. And please, yeah, I'm sure you're all going to follow them like we are in the future. On social media, on live media, and help spread the word. So thank you.
Thank you so much.